when I was a younger man, starting my career, I was part of a company at the time that was really focused on getting everybody to know what their big why is. Companies go through these big initiative periods, and during this particular phase, I was just getting started, and everyone's talking about, what is your big why? What is your big why? It was hard to have conversations with anyone in the organization without them first saying, well, what's your big why? It was a little bit annoying. Asking for somebody's big why was another way of asking about a person's purpose. And the thought of answering that question was really scary for me as a young guy. What if I answer and I'm wrong? What if my purpose isn't good enough or big enough or important enough? If I answer and I give you this answer, if I give myself this answer, am I stuck with this answer forever? I'm only 20 something. Do I get to change my answer later? It sounds like the kind of question that carries a life sentence. And to be honest, I also felt like the question was a little bit culty. I mean, we are here to get a job done. If I do the job and do it well, why do you need to know my big why? You do a good job, and then they're like, oh, that's nice, but what's your big why? None of your business, Susan, Just do the work. Judge me on my results, not my motivations. And so I avoided this whole idea of the big why or purpose, and instead I just focused on the work itself. Just do the work, grind day in and day out. And after years of this, building my business, going hard, I finally burned out. Burning out is a really, really awful feeling. It's also a really confusing feeling. Because if you're burned out, chances are you're probably pretty good at the work that you do. You're doing the work at a high level. It's very likely that other people recognize you for how good you are at doing that work. You're probably paid well to do that work. But even with all that, there's something in you that's really souring on it. And that has the potential to create some guilt when it happens. And you think to yourself, well, I shouldn't feel this way. I'm so lucky. I have work. I'm in demand. People rely on me. And I'm so ungrateful. I shouldn't feel this way. I must be a terrible person. And around the emotional spiraling goes. What I realized through my own experience with burnout was that productivity, or doing the work, when that gets detached from my purpose or my big why that they annoyed me with, when my productivity gets detached from my purpose, it just becomes busy work. And busy work lends itself to burnout. And in many ways, that burnout is like its own form of hell on earth. And it doesn't matter how important or noble the work is, if you allow that work to become busy work, if you allow it to become your grind, meaning you're just going through the motions, putting in the hours day in, day out, you are going to experience, obviously, the crispy sensation of burnout. But when we're connected to our purpose, that's where the emotional and the spiritual parts of us connect to our productivity. And so to me, being truly productive to escape the burnout is to be productive towards something greater than the task right in front of me. It's more than just the thing I'm doing, but it's the reason behind it. And I don't think the answer to burnout is usually, it's not a career change, but it's a change in how we approach the career. The remedy isn't in what we do, it's in how we do it, which is a hard adjustment. I get that. And you may be on the other side of this, making the argument that there is no other way to do it. After all, you are the expert. You are really good at this. You know what you're doing. Other people recognize you for doing it so well. You are paid well. What do you mean, do it differently? Well, on my side of that argument, I would say that you aren't really doing it that well if you aren't well doing it. And that's a big distinction that we have to make. Something is obviously broken in your approach. So what do you do about that? I want to tell you what I've tried and am continuing to try, and I want to tell you a story about the best example of living a life of purposeful vocational service that I've ever experienced up close and in person. I suspect that one of the reasons for experiencing burnout is that we get too zoomed in on the mechanics of what we do. We lose sight of the person who is benefiting from the work. When I was running the marketing firm for realtors in Austin, we had offices around the country. I worked with a lot of agents, literally thousands of agents. And after a while of problem solving and servicing the needs of these agents and taking orders and doing the things, I got really zoomed in on the details of my business, my processes, The business was it, right? Me, totally focused, totally had blinders on. And I'm pretty sure that somewhere along the way, I forgot the ripple effect of my impact on those people. Well, that impact became really clear when my friend Sharon Downer died. Sharon was an agent whose office was down the hall from mine. She didn't come into the office very often. She would tell me I don't like the politics of it. But when she did come in, she would always come through the big door that was in front of me. I was in a glass, like sort of goldfish office, and I could see everything and everybody could see me. And there was a door coming into their hallway. It was right in front of me. And you could always tell it was Sharon because she always had things in her hand and it was bang against the door. She would open the door and she would come schlepping in with all these bags. She would see me sitting there. She would drop all that stuff. She would come give me a really big hug, the kind of hug you never forget. And then she would kiss me right on the lips, which was a little bit too much. It was very, very sweet, but it was always wet. And as a germaphobe, I would always wait until she looked away so I could wipe it off. But nonetheless, I loved Sharon. And I did some marketing work for her and her husband, Bob. Sharon was one of the thousands that I worked with. And as much as I loved her, Sharon also contributed to my burnout. And so I'm sitting at Sharon's funeral. And the family is seated up front. It's very obvious at the front that this is the family. And I'm seated over here on the left side. There were a whole bunch of people from our office that were there, and that's where I was seated. And on the other side of the church, there were all these people that I didn't know. I couldn't place them. And then the eulogy started. And one by one, these people started going up and talking about their realtor, Sharon, and what a godsend she had been to them. They would say things like, she helped us get our kids in the right schools. She brought us groceries when we first moved here. She helped us make friends when we didn't know anybody. Sharon lived a life in service to these people. She found that she could give back and serve her fellow man through real estate. By the way, before Sharon was a realtor, she was a nun. And this is one of the reasons I love working with realtors is because there's always a good story. Sharon was a nun. Who knew? But imagine this for a second. These people, lots of them, by the way, took time out of their day. This was the middle of the week. It was a work day. These people took time out of their busy weeks to not just show up, but they found the courage to stand in front of a room full of strangers and honor this woman who was their realtor. It had a profound impact on me. Profound. And I left that funeral. I didn't talk to anybody. I just left. I lived pretty close to where they held the service. And I just walked out, walked home. I walked home, and that day, I started creating the training program that trains new agents and that I've used to train thousands of new agents and help them launch their career. When the pandemic hit, I closed that business and wrote my book. And over the last year, I've been working to relaunch that real estate training business, and it has been painful. It has been so painful. It turns out it's not as easy to relaunch as it is to start. And I've been getting so frustrated, and I get tired, and I get mad. And amongst all of that, though, what I'm noticing is I'm not getting burned out. And I think that Sharon is why. I feel lots and lots of things about this business and about the work, but not burnout. And I think that's because I connect to what I'm doing. I can connect it to something that matters. I can connect to the humanity of what I'm doing, even though it's frustrating, even though I just want to blow it up sometimes. I'm not getting burned out. I keep getting up every single day and going back to it. You know, I'm not the personality to be the realtor. I'm not good at that, but I'm good at empowering others to be that. I'm not the best writer, but I also know that my book has had an impact on people for the better because they've told me that. They've written me that. And I think there's a secret in there somewhere for managing burnout. I think there's a lesson in there for all of us. Life is not going to be all Skittles and kittens. Doing the work is not always going to be fun. It's going to get to us. It's going to happen. We're going to get frustrated. We're going to get upset. But I do think we can avoid the burnout, which just makes us want to just throw in the towel. I have never seen up close and so profoundly the idea of a person living their purpose like I saw with Sharon. In personal development, we do a lot of imagine you're on your deathbed sort of exercises. and they can be really effective. But it's just not the same as when a true servant's body is in the room and you see the people actually stand up and go talk about that person. It's incredible. How can you trace back what you do back to its roots of being in service to your fellow man? Take away the mechanics of what you're doing and think about the impact on the person themselves. How can you find the humanity in what you do? What Sharon did for those people had very little to do with finding them a house. She was good at it. She was a top producing agent. That's how she made her living. But they loved her not because of finding the house and negotiating the contract and all the mechanics of that business. They fell in love with her and came to honor her because how she showed up in their lives as a human being. How can we all zoom out, away from the flames of burnout, and experience the warmth of that human connection? May you all have joy, peace, and happiness, good health and well-being, a life of ease and prosperity, the courage to get what you want from this life, the clarity to know what that is, the imagination to not sell yourself short, and the discipline to see it through.